If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In the June 2022 AARP Bulletin, an article titled The New Truth About Aging presents the results of the AARP-National Geographic Second Half of Life Study. In this episode, Corbin and I discussed the results presented in the Health Redefined section. The questions raised ranged from how likely one would be to take a pill to extend one's life by 10 years, to what respondents fear most about aging. We discuss how health is defined and how it is being redefined in a cross-section of society. All right, so Corbin, how old are you?
3. I will be turning 33 this August.
No. Early happy birthday.
Well, I thank you.
I am 59, so thanks to my wife, I am a member of AARP because I wouldn't have joined. I don't feel I'm that old yet. So we get this monthly magazine, I believe it is, the AARP Bulletin. And in this recent issue, there's a cover story called The Truth About Aging. And I'm not quite sure why they title it that, because it's basically just talking about a survey that they did in conjunction with National Geographic magazine. And there's some interesting questions in there, and I thought it might be interesting for us to just kind of go through and have a little discussion. As kind of two generations, our answers might be a little bit different in these as we look at the responses to the various questions. Obviously, there is a bit of a gender differential in those. And
right.
I thought we'd maybe talk about some of the health redefined questions that they ask. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's going to be, a good open-ended podcast discussion. So do you want to just dive into some of the questions?
Yeah, let's just dive into these questions.
Perfect.
And see what they say.
Assume for a moment that there was a pill that could extend your life by 10 years. How likely would you be to take that pill? At least somewhat likely. So in my age demographic between the ages of 18 through 39, it looks like 72% of those individuals are at least somewhat likely to take it. Between the ages of 40 through 49, 78% of those individuals would be more than likely to take it. Between the ages of 50 to 59, that's your age, 80% of those individuals are willing to take it. 60 to 69, 80% is willing to take it. 70 to 79, 78% of those are willing to take it. And then 80 plus, it drops back down to 70% of those individuals are willing to take it. It's very interesting. It's kind of like a bell curve. So it starts off, the younger you are, I'm not really going to take it. And then the older you get, it kind of goes up and then it goes down into a bell curve. Let's dive into that. If there was a pill for you to take to extend your life for 10 years, would you jump on that opportunity to take that?
See, I think with that question, it really requires a little bit more information, a little bit more of a nuanced approach. I mean, myself personally, I wouldn't take a pill for anything. Well, not for anything per se, but I look at, we talk in exercise science all the time. But, if there's a pill that make you fit, but there's no such pill. But there is much that we can do to change our lifestyle to add that 10 years. I mean, we've talked in a couple of the recent podcasts about what we can do with our diet, and just eating a better diet adds to that. So it's like, why do we need to take a pill to improve these things when we can improve our lifestyle and add 10 years to our life? And I think it is interesting that it has a bit of that bell curve that I'm not quite sure why at the younger ages they're just not thinking about that. I think some of it could be, in the time when this survey was taken, that maybe some of the younger generations are just looking at how dismal the future seems for the world, and why would I want to take a pill to be 10 extra years in this bullshit and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That may be kind of what's going on in there. And as we get to in your 80s, you're already 80 years old. Do you really want 10 more years of this? It really depends on what is your health at that point in life. And for me, I'm not worried about getting 10 more years, because my goal is to live a lifestyle that's going to get me to 100. And do I want to be 110? I don't know. 100 is pretty good for me. I'll be happy with that. But I don't know what that 10 more years is going to be. So for me, that question's kind of rough. I wouldn't do it with a pill. I don't need a pill just to live longer. And you also have to consider, what is the quality of that 10 years going to be? And that's a big unknown in that question. What's your thoughts on it being in the younger end?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, if being on the younger end, especially when I was in college and stuff, I really didn't really think about, do I want to add extra years onto my life? It's like, well, I got the whole world ahead of me. My whole it's out there. I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out. So taking something to extend that wasn't really an option for me. Now, I agree with you. I think if you had the opportunity to add extra years onto your life, well, it kind of depends on what your life is. If you were involved in, say, an accident and you're wheelchair bound, or your worst case scenario, you're a vegetable in the hospital and you're just on life support, 10 years of that, of not actually living and not actually experiencing life, that's a whole nother game. Now, pill, what if it was a metaphor, right? Or an acronym, not a metaphor. And what if it was like physical enlightenment of life longevity, right? So now you're fit. Yeah.
Where'd you learn to spell?
Oh.
Take a Pell.
Yeah, take a Pell. Physical intelligent of life longevity, whatever, PILL. And you're physically active and you're physically fit and you're able to fully experience life, then yeah, that might be something that would be interesting, but we already have that. And that's exercise. That's nutrition. All of that adds those extra years onto your life. Taking a pill, like a physical supplement, that's not necessarily, I don't know, not for me.
But I think it's a bit reflective of our society too. We all, we want hacks, we want the shortcuts, we want the medical treatments to get us to where, we want to be health-wise. We're not as willing to put the effort into it.
Well, I think part of that being on the younger end, it could just be the world that we're living in. It is really, really competitive, and a lot of individuals have that mindset of, I gotta fully dedicate my time, and things move so fast, especially with the age of the internet. It's eat or be eaten, right? But there is something awesome about either waking up early or fitting exercise into your daily schedule. One, it kind of, when you don't want to work out or you don't want to exercise and you still push yourself to do it, it really, in those moments of, I guess, physical uncomfortability, you kind of really get to know who you are as a person. And adding that extra level of discipline, I don't know, you feel like you can take on anything, really.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. And I think, it's not just the physical dimension. I mean, we talk often about what I call well-centered fitness, spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, social dimensions of being well. All of those, if you have a growth focus in your life, growth-centered focus or, a growth approach in your life, that quality of life, that getting 10 more years is going to be much more valuable. It's not in a pill.
Not in a pill. Well, speaking of pills, the next question after that, they kind of changed the wording a little bit. Assume for a moment that there was a pill that could slow down the aging and maintain your health even longer. How likely would you be able to take that? At least somewhat likely. In my age bracket, between the ages of 18 and 39, 82% of those individuals would pop that pill. Between the ages of 40 and 49, 81%. Between the ages of 50 and 59, 88% of individuals would take that. 60 through 69, 87%. 70 through 79, 87%. And 80 or older, only 81% would actually take that pill. And I think that's really interesting, being on that younger end, but seeing the bracket of your generation gap being the most likely to take that pill. I think it's really interesting. You hear the stereotypical midlife crisis of individuals where they're in that age of they're like, oh man, I'm hitting that senior citizen, or I'm getting old. I'm slowly feeling the effects of my age, but I still feel really young, and there's still so much life to experience, and retirement's right around the corner, or whatever the case may be, to add that extra life. I think it's really interesting that is the highest individuals percentage that would most likely take a pill to add longer, add a better health for longer onto your life and prevent the steps of aging.
And I think it's not a surprise that the 50 to 59-year-old age group is the most likely to be considering that, because I think that, you get into that age group, that's when the sins of your childhood are starting to catch up with you, right? And you start, I've lost several friends in the last few years, and it just seems like that starts to escalate in your 50s, and you start to feel more of the aches and pains, and you start to recognize you're a bit more mortal than you thought you were in your 20s and 30s. And so that's not entirely surprising that there would be a little bit more focus in there. I do think those numbers are interesting because there's almost about a 10% increase across all of the age groups. Mm-hmm. That, if you could slow that aging process with a pill, you'd do it. Well, it's another thing too. It's like, well, we can do that. We already know what we need to do to slow that aging process. And it's the stuff that we talk about in there and about aging well. It's diet, exercise, having a proper mindset, taking care of yourself, not doing stupid things that are going to get you sick and injured and all that kind of stuff. And, so again, it's not a pill, but it is at least good to see that people want to be healthier. But it's interesting that that survey really doesn't focus in on what can we do or what are we doing. And actually, I think the questions that are following give a little bit of indication what people are actually doing to permit themselves to have that healthier another 10 years of their life.
I'm actually surprised that my age bracket is so low. Now, I can only assume it's so low because it's such a larger age bracket. It's going from 18 all the way to 39. But I'm pretty sure if we shortened it from like 30 to 39, like the other ones are only in brackets of 9, I'm pretty sure that one would actually be a lot higher.
Probably a little bit higher than that 18.
The 18, because when I was 18, 19, I felt invincible. There's like, I don't need to take anything. But if there was something like, I don't know, just hypothetically, if someone was like, hey man, take vitamin D, it's really going to make it's really going to make your energy levels. You're going to feel like you did when you were 18. And I'd be like, vitamin D, well, I get that from the sun. That's a natural supplement altogether. Yeah, I'm going to be taking that every day. But again, that's not me promoting taking pills or medication or anything like that. I'm really shocked that that age bracket is so wide, but I feel like the percentage should be a lot higher. I know my friends, a lot of us, when we turned 30, we're like, man, like this, my spirit's young, but my body's starting I feel a difference when I wake up, my knees, or whatever the case may be. It's interesting.
Well, I think at that lower end too, you're not thinking about the prospect of aging. I mean,
No, not at all.
You've just got. I mean, you're 18. You've pretty much you're still kind of on the tail end of puberty, right? And you haven't started to hit that decline. So we've talked about in exercise physiology class. That about 25 is where you start seeing a lot of things start to drop off, and so in that time frame, there's only really about 5 years where now suddenly you've gotten out of college, you're starting to recognize that the things that you did or didn't do are starting to catch up with you in terms of your health and your longevity. And so you're right. I think that the age groups need to be split up a little bit differently. And it is not surprising that they're not as concerned about that long-term health as somebody that is going to be older is going to be.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next category. Healthy with conditions is the new norm. How would you rate your overall health? Very good or excellent? Well, the 18 through 39 age bracket, 42% that they agreed that they were very good or excellent. The age bracket of 40 through 49, 37% believe that. 50 through 59, 39% agreed. 60 through 69, 44% agreed. 70 through 79, 49% agreed. And then 80 plus, 49% agreed that they were in very good or excellent health. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
And again, that's another one of those questions. It's a bit nuanced. What is your definition of good health? And I think at both ends of the spectrum, there might be a little bit different, definitions of what health is. I mean, you're 80 years old. A lot of people in their 80s that think that just the fact that they can, they're alive and their heart's ticking, they're in very good health, and they're taking fewer pills than their neighbor at the retirement community. And I think for some, I know, like, for my definition of what will be healthy when I'm 80 is going to be much different than probably many of my peers. And, at younger age, I think we're also seeing a different consideration of what is considered healthy. I mean, you just think of like the rates of obesity, how they have grown and become much more accepted in that age group. Speak a little bit to how we perceive what good health is.
Going back to when I used to do personal training, what was crazy to me is individuals that were in the age range of roughly 74 years old always blew my mind. Their strength was, they were all just really, really crazy strong. Their endurance, their stamina, and they were just so in tune with their bodies. I mean, they were literally running laps. I would do either like boot camp classes or conditioning courses, and the 74-year-olds they were running laps around the 19 or the 23-year-olds, where you're like, well, you guys should be in the peak shape of your life. And some of those 74-year-olds, you would talk to them and you're like, hey, you are a phenomenal athlete. Did you do like sports or anything? And most of them, particularly the women in that age bracket, were like, nope, they didn't really offer us sports. And it's like, what'd you do when you were younger? Like, how are you so fit? And most of them are just like, I don't know. Just Sam. I don't know. I feel like and this is just an opinion, I feel like we as humans have kind of evolved to our environment in a weird way. I don't know if it's the food that we're taking in daily or if it's just lifestyle habits, but I mean, even look at old photos of your grandparents. If you look at an old photo of your grandparent and you look at an old photo of you when you were roughly that same age, you're almost looking at like two different species of humans, right? Have you ever
Speak for yourself.
Well, yes. I'm just saying, like some, I don't know. That 74 age range was always just mind blowing to me because they were just tenacious and they just would not stop. They were just absolute go getters. And, you know, when the 23 or 24-year-olds were deciding, hey, I'm going to step it up and I'm going to do this entire exercise with 35-pound weight dumbbells. Well, then the 74 age bracket, those individuals would see them and they would like shrug their shoulders and go grab 40 pounds and perform the entire thing with good form, good technique, and literally not even like they weren't breathing hard or anything. It was always mind blowing to me.
Yeah, and I think some of that is, selective population. You mentioned evolved. I was thinking devolved. I think our physical characteristics are devolving a little bit as we become increasingly sedentary, sitting at the computers. And again, I think we are starting to accept a lower level of physical capability as being healthy, whereas a 74-year-old may have had a much more physical life, and to them, they've been able to maintain that a little bit more. They're going to a personal trainer because they see the need in maintaining that health and fitness, as opposed to, maybe an 84-year-old or 74-year-old that has suddenly realized their mortality and now goes to a personal trainer. But that younger, at 20 something, going to a personal trainer, sometimes they're getting that rude awakening of just how out of shape they are. And that's why they're going to a personal trainer. So it's probably a little bit hard to compare. This is why, we talk in classes about cross-sectional studies versus longitudinal studies. It will be interesting to kind of see how these various populations have changed or will change over the course of time. But I think there's certainly some population generational differences that we see within these age groups. And I do think it's quite individualized. Good funny story for you. I'm doing the strength and conditioning for my son's wrestling team, and last week a couple of the kids were doing the seated row and just really, really crappy form. Really like pulling with their lower back and almost kind of throwing the weight around. And they had like almost a stack on. I think it was like 200 out of 210 pounds was the weight that they were doing, and none of them should be doing that weight. And so I said, here, let me show you how to do that. And I got on and just cranked out 10 reps like nothing, which surprised me because it was 200 pounds. I thought it would be at least a little bit more stressful. And they are all just kind of taken back, like, oh my God, guy's 59 years old and he just cranked out 10 reps on this machine and we can't even do it in good form. So it's some of it is a bit more generational. It's experiential. And it's maybe somewhat the state of physical education and our education system as well.
That can be an entire different podcast if you want to dive into that, but I could not agree with you more on that one.
What's the next question?
Okay, sorry about that. The next question category, and this cracks me up. With age comes blueberries and walking shoes. Question: I currently take steps to achieve this goal. Get restful sleep. 18 through the 39-year-old age bracket, 62% of them get restful sleep. The 40 through 49-year-old age, 65% of them get restful sleep. 50 through 59, 65%. 60 through 69, 75%. 70 through 79, 78%. and 80 plus or older get 75% of good restful sleep.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't surprise me, those numbers. First of all, in your younger ages, who's really conscientious about getting restful sleep? It's really getting as much done in the day as possible.
Yeah.
And, when I was in my 20s, I'd get up early and, I worked late, wasn't really concerned about sleep, and I just getting everything done that I could do. Now that I'm older and I recognize, and part of it is kind of my background, recognizing the need to have a bedtime and a time to get up. It's not so much restful sleep. I mean, I guess I do want restful sleep. As you yawn here, obviously you're not getting restful sleep there.
No, got a lot going on.
But you do become a little bit more conscientious about it. But it doesn't surprise me that the younger, just don't give it any thought. But once we get into our 60s and beyond, we start maybe thinking about how can I sleep a little bit better. And some of that too, for us males in our late 50s, early 60s, the prostate kind of dictates a little bit of how much restful sleep you get. And, it's like, I want to be able to get through the night without having to pee 5 times, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that as we age, we start looking at, well, what can I do to be a little bit more conscientious about my sleep patterns? It would be nice to see this a little bit younger. I keep telling my students, you need to have a bedtime, get to bed at a reasonable time, get that 6 to 8 hours of sleep, get up early, and even my kids, my teenage son, I mean, it's like, you got to have regular sleep patterns. If you want to, he's trying to grow muscle and stuff and get stronger for wrestling, you got to have regular sleep. You can't stay up until 2:00 in the morning playing computer games and then sleep until noon on the weekends and then try and get up early for school. Regular sleep is going to be much more helpful for you. So what about you? Do you make any effort to get restful?
No, yeah. So once I hit my 30s, actually thankfully, because of the COVID pandemic, prior to COVID, I was working 3 jobs. And then when COVID happened, I ended up losing 2 of those jobs just because the world ended up shutting down. But I was able to maintain 1 job. And because of that, I was able to actually kind of set a bedtime, and it's been nice. There are obviously other events, like recently kind of going through some stuff in my personal life ties into the work life. And you're like, okay, there's only so many hours in the day. I got to fit all this in. When I was younger though, 18, 19, I really never drank caffeine ever. I had no need for it, but I was so energetic and I was so just really hyper. And I don't know if it was just because it's like testosterone's pumping through you, but I just never felt tired ever at all. And I mean, I'd stay up all night sometimes, just like wired, ready to go. And once I hit 21 in those college age, and you're at the legal adult drinking age here in America, and you're able to go out and see the bar scene. Yeah, I kind of stayed out a little late just for experiencing that. When I graduated college, I realized how challenging it is living in the Portland metro area, working a minimum wage job. Like you couldn't even live paycheck to paycheck. And I started picking up 2, 3, 4 jobs. And I was averaging for many years only like 3 hours of sleep. I was really tired, and then kind of got on a really good schedule where I was getting about 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And now I'm getting a full like 8 hours. But however, I did notice when I turned 29, I started feeling more of the need for caffeinated beverages throughout the day, like first thing in the morning, at least, and just keeping my mind sharp. What's your opinion on that? Caffeinated beverages?
I mean, I'm fine with them. There is certain health benefits to coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily the caffeine aspect of it, but I don't really feel the need for it. I like coffee. I drink probably way too much coffee, but I can drink it in the evening and still sleep fine. So,
Huh.
I mean, I guess, it might affect the bladder a little bit and get me up at night, but it doesn't make me antsy. I don't have problems if I don't have coffee. Uh, it is addictive. It is a bit of a drug. It's probably not wise for everybody to consume caffeinated beverages. I think it's really one of those more individualized things. Is does it negatively affect you? Then don't do it. If it doesn't have a negative effect on you, then it's not going to cause you much harm. You're fine. So yeah, I think the best thing for me in terms of not needing caffeine is just having a normal sleep wake cycle. I'm always an early riser, and I have a bedtime. And my wife I think she's beyond laughing at me now, but it's kind of like, oh, it's your bedtime. It's 9 o'clock hits. We'll go to watch a show at night or something like that. It's like, well, you're starting a movie now. It's it's only an hour till my bedtime. I can't watch this whole movie. And I'm generally pretty much 9 to 9:30 is when I'm gonna be hitting that sack. Maybe as late as 10, but I'm I'm getting up no later than probably 5 in the morning. If I sleep until 6, I mean it's really oversleeping to me.
Going off on a little tangent, do you go camping at all?
Some, yeah.
Do you feel that you get a better night's rest when you're camping versus when you're home?
I don't think it any different. Might be a little bit worse because I hate laying on hard ground all night. But I'm up early. I get up generally by about the crack of dawn. I'm up without a clock. Get up. I make myself a pot of coffee, and that's when I'll sit down and I get some of my best kind of journaling and meditative kind of activity during that period of time because nobody's up. There's not much activity in the campsites, and I really enjoy that time. I'd start a fire, sit in front of the fire, and
Right.
warm up. And usually we have the dogs there, so I kind of just hang with the dogs, drink my coffee, do a little bit of journaling, and I really enjoy that. But I'm usually wanting to get to bed, and if we're camping with other people and staying up and everybody wants to play games or something like that, it's kind of like, I gotta go to bed. Come on, let's wrap this up. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I always feel I'm way more comfortable in my bed at home than I am laying on the ground, but I don't know what it is about camping. I always feel super, super well rested. I don't know if it's the fresh air. I don't know if it's the fact that you don't have any cell service or you're not looking at a TV screen. So you're not getting that blue light effect and you're just, boom, hitting that REM sleep without any interruptions. But something about camping is just great. We are going way off topic. Let's dive back into the other questions. I currently take the steps to achieve this goal of maintaining a healthy heart. The age bracket of 18 through 39, 57% of them maintain a healthy heart. 40 through 49, 60%. 50 through 59, 64%. 60 through 69, 77%. 70 through 79, 85%. And 80 plus is 86% of those individuals maintain the steps of having a healthy heart. I think that's pretty obvious looking at these stats. I feel like the older you get, the more important you start realizing, I gotta have my heart health intact. I know when I was younger, being in the younger age, my heart was the least thing I was thinking about. It really wasn't. I mean, unless you talk about the emotional, having it get broken, but that's not what this subject is on. Yeah, that was the farthest thing from my mind. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm starting to think about it a lot more. But earlier? No, not at all.
So I find I've thought about it quite the opposite,
Really?
and part of that, I got into exercise physiology, after my undergrad, so I went immediately into my master's degree. At that time, exercise physiology was very largely cardiac focused. And so I was doing a lot more for heart health, and doing a lot more cardio and all those kind of things. And as I've aged in the field as well as aging in life, kind of recognize it's like my heart's already healthy and it doesn't take much to maintain it. I've been focused a lot more on, maintaining my muscular health and my mental health and those types of things as opposed to my heart health because, my heart's already healthy. I mean, I've had no issues. My cholesterol is generally pretty good. I have never had high blood pressure. I've had no heart irregularities. And so I feel pretty good about, continuing the next 50 years with my heart, the heart that I have. Whereas, for those populations that we're looking at here and the kind of the average individual, kind of makes sense that, the younger people, it's furthest from their mind about keeping a healthy heart. As they age and you get into your 50s and you start realizing, maybe the doctor is telling you your heart, you need to lose some weight, you need to take care of this high blood pressure and everything else, and it starts becoming much more of a concern. And then so, those people 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and so on are starting, and what is it that they're doing to maintain a healthy heart? For some of those people, it may be, well, I'm taking my heart medication, I'm taking my blood pressure medication, I'm I'm taking my cholesterol medication. How many of them are actually exercising and doing the things to improve and to maintain that healthy heart? Simply just taking action doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best action. And it is somewhat, to me, disappointing that we are not seeing that action becoming a bit more of a priority at a younger age.
Well, I do think it's interesting because you mentioned that when you first got into exercise science, it was more cardiovascular focused. But I think the more the sciences come out, I think that's kind of a myth. That's like running or walking is not the only way to help your heart. And actually, with weight training, studies show that are out there that not only are you helping your skeletal muscles, but you're also, I mean, you're increasing your heart rate. You can expand it to, the maximum beats per minute. Like you can kill two birds with one stone. You don't have to just, no, you don't think so?
Yeah. I mean, is it one of those nuanced kind of questions that it's what are you doing specifically? And it really depends on the nature of the strength training that you're doing, the resistance training, whether you're actually working your heart. I've kind of come to be using what I call my training continuum in my classes, and it breaks down the types of exercise and what are the real benefits for it. And, the lower the kind of the intensity of the exercise we're doing, the more cardio or aerobic type of exercise we're doing, more like steady state exercise, the more it is general health, a bit more heart health. But in order to improve our cardiovascular heart health, we need to be doing something that is going to be increasing stroke volume, increasing arteriovenous oxygen difference.
Right.
And so it really depends on the nature of the activity that you're doing. If I'm doing pure strength training, I'm focused almost entirely on my muscular strength, even though my heart rate might go up because, essentially it's in your recovery periods that your heart starts pounding, after you do like a, set of say 3 repetitions. But that's not strengthening your heart. That's just simply getting oxygen to that muscle. As we move kind of more to the middle of the range, so kind of what I would call more high intensity interval resistance training, not HIIT per se, because HIIT would be a bit more on the cardio side. High intensity training is more on the strength side, but high intensity interval resistance training, what often gets kind of labeled as my air quote Tabata, in gym settings would be something that's kind of probably going to be in a little bit more of that balance. And if you want a more general approach to benefiting your heart, but also benefiting the muscle, I think that type of activity will be a little bit more beneficial. But it really depends on, again, specificity, the specificity principle of exercise that, in order for the body to make specific adaptations, it's got to have the specific imposed demand. That makes sense?
Totally makes sense. I currently take the steps to achieve this goal of maintaining a healthy weight. The age bracket of 18 through 39, 66%, 40 through 49, 60%, 50 through 59, 61%, 60 through 69, 66%, 70 through 79 is 70%, and 80 or older, 74% of those individuals currently take the steps to maintain a healthy weight.
That's another question that I'd really want to peel off the layers of and dive into a little bit deeper. Really, what are the people talking about when they're talking about taking the steps to maintain a healthy weight? What is your definition of a healthy
Exactly.
weight? For the younger population, I don't know that we wholly understand really what healthy weight is. I think, again, we have had a little bit more acceptance in society of obesity. There's good and bad in that. I mean, I think there is a certain good in accepting the diversity of body types and not body shaming somebody. But in doing that, we often lose the capacity to understand what our healthy body composition is. We think, well, I'm fine. I feel fine being 50 pounds overweight. So don't judge me for that. But we don't recognize the health issues that are down the line from living that lifestyle. Whereas, 20-pound fat loss, yeah, you're not going to have six-pack abs and you don't need that. In fact, I think that's an unhealthy approach as well. But, in accepting any body type, we kind of miss the mark in terms of understanding what is healthy for that individual. And it's interesting that as we age, we tend to look at just weight, and so many of those people in those older age groups, and they're saying maintaining a healthy weight, you have a lot of people say, well, I still weigh what I weighed in high school. Well, yes, you do, but that's nuanced. Do you still have the same amount of muscle mass that you had in high school?
Right.
No. Well, then you've actually gained weight. You've just lost muscle mass. And so, when we talk weight, I think we often can lose what is healthy for individuals. We can go from being just simply over fat at a younger age to being skinny fat as we get older. And you see a lot of elderly individuals or older individuals, even, in my age group, I wouldn't call myself elderly yet, but, we see a lot of people who they haven't gained a lot of weight, but their lean muscle mass is diminished considerably and their fat mass has increased to replace that. And even though they might look slender, there's still a lot of body fat there that is unhealthy. And there's a lot of people who can be of seemingly healthy body weights that are, at risk of metabolic syndrome.
Well, you're talking about the different types of fat, visceral fat, like you can indeed be on the outside skinny or lean looking, but your organs are covered in fat. And that puts you at a higher risk. And a lot of people don't even realize that or think about that. And I also think that this particular question, it's kind of it's kind of a loaded question because each age group, each bracket, they're going to have their own definition of what healthy is, right? Where, you're mentioning like, you could be overweight. You could be way underweight too. I know my grandma was pretty skinny. Like she just was always like, I'm just so fat. I'm so fat. It's like, Grandma, what are you talking about? You're like really lean. And then it kind of goes into you're asking these survey to individuals, and not only is the age or the time frame that they grew up in, they're going to have their own perception on what is a healthy weight, but they're also going to see it from their own point of view as well, which is a whole nother level. I mean, I think at one point in one of the classes you were teaching, we got on the subject of like body dysmorphia. And I mean, that can be a whole nother realm. So I just think it's a really dumb question that you're going through the steps to achieve a healthy weight without actually describing what that healthy weight is. And you have such a large section of, you got the 18 through 39, and then you got the 50 through 59 and the 70 through 79. Well, each one of them are going to have their own standard of what a healthy weight actually is. I think it's just really dumb. I do agree with you. We are moving into a realm where we're acknowledging that there's different types of bodies, and there doesn't have to be one peak standard of beauty. And we are going into a realm where we're hopefully preventing body shaming or bullying of any kind. And I'm all on board with that. But we also, I fully agree with you. We have to acknowledge, like, what is the difference between healthy and not healthy? It's got nothing to do with body shaming. Acknowledging that there's different types of bodies is great, but being too overweight puts you at risk of health conditions. Being too underweight puts you at risk, or being right in the middle where you don't look overweight, you don't look underweight, but you're filled with visceral fat. These are all health conditions, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, this talks about health redefined is kind of the title of this article or this the survey. It doesn't really address how is health defined in these various age groups. And I think that's, there would be a very interesting study to, in each of these age groups, what is their definition of health? And so you place yourself in on the healthy end of your age group. But if you have a kind of an unhealthy perspective of what your age group should be, then we don't really get the best answers in these questions. And I do find that kind of the whole healthy weight thing is partly the fault of our field of exercise science in terms of kind of defining what, we define things based on the norms. And so there's this general expectation that as we age, we're going to see a bit of creeping up of body fat. And so, it's considered a bit more healthy to have a little bit more body fat the older you get, because that's what happens as we age. But should that be the case? I personally think we should be of more of a mindset of maintaining a healthy standard throughout the life. That I should not be any more fat at 60 than I was at 50 or 40 or whatever. That, yeah, I'm going to lose some muscle mass just because I'm maybe not training the same or able to train as much. But as I lose that muscle mass, then there should be probably a corresponding loss in weight. Or, if I'm going to weigh the same as I did in high school, it better be the same distribution of fat and muscle, if that makes any sense. Or relatively small creeping up of body fat. It's maybe, 12% body fat is a bit more healthy, acceptable in your 20s, and 20% is better in your 50s and 60s. We don't have that data. I don't think we've focused on that. I think we have just focused on this is what populations are like. And, people who are in this category tend to have fewer health issues than the rest of the population. But is it optimal health? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. Like, we don't have that data because maybe it's not just exercise science in that realm. Maybe it's not just our fault. Maybe it's just society's fault. Like, well, this is how it is. This is how it always has been. This is to expect. But has there really been anyone to kind of push that norm and say, no, I don't think we should settle for this. I think, we spent all this time daring to be great, daring to be excellent. Why just accept that when you hit the age of 70, you're going to not only lose muscle, but gain fat as well. And that's just the way it is. And, why not push it? why not say, I want more. This is what I want. And then get more studies, more research done. I know Tony Horton, creator of the whole P90X thing, I know he has that very same mindset. It's like, that shouldn't be an excuse.
He has that mindset because he can market stuff.
He does. But
I think we need to have that mindset within the medical profession.
I think we do too.
And I don't think we quite see that. I think, when you go to a doctor, oftentimes it's like, well, yeah, you're healthy for your age. Well, you're basically saying that health has to decline as we age. And it doesn't. We can do better, I think.
Last question. I currently take the steps to achieve and maintain physical stamina. Between the ages of 18 through 39, 55% were currently taking the steps to achieve physical stamina. 40 through 49 age bracket, 54%. 50 through 59, 58%. 60 through 69, 64%. 70 through 79, 67%. And then 80 or older, 73% of those individuals were currently taking the steps to achieve and maintain physical stamina.
Again, I think that's a question that you have to dive into. How are they personally defining stamina in each of those cases? And it is interesting that, the younger populations are a little less inclined to be focused on that. And I think that's kind of the general theme of this article anyhow, is that the older population is becoming a lot more health conscious, physical fitness conscious, wellness conscious. And we may not be seeing it quite as much in our younger generations.
Well, I mean, it also kind of ties in to what we were just discussing. It's like when they go to a doctor and the doctor tells them, oh, you're fine. You're great. You're in peak shape for your age bracket. Do they now have that mindset or that mentality? Yeah, I'm doing what I need to do in order to maintain my physical stamina for my age bracket. Or do they challenge themselves? Do they get out of that comfort zone? Do they get out of that social norm of, this is my age bracket, therefore I should only be able to do this? No, screw that. I'm going more. Right? I'm mentally tough. I'm going to push my body. Again, kind of a loaded question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that we can really get that out of this survey. I do think there is much more of a focus on a better health approach to living in the aging population. I think more people are becoming a bit more aware of fitness. There's more fitness opportunities. I think there's less of a mindset that, you age, you stop doing this stuff. You shouldn't be lifting weights in your 80s. You shouldn't be doing all this exercise stuff. You need to slow down. And I think more and more aging adults are starting to recognize, no, I don't need to slow down. I need to maintain. And I think some of that is kind of coming out in this survey, is that, there is a mindset in the older population that health is important, movement is important, and doing things to maintain and improve one's health takes a priority over other things in life. And not quite sure where we're at with that in the younger population. What's your thoughts on that? You're the younger generation.
Right. Well, when I was younger, in that 18 through early 20s, I really wasn't doing anything to maintain my physical stamina. I had graduated high school and I wasn't playing college sports. In high school, yeah, I was training for a purpose, right? But then once I went into college, I kind of was like, I don't really. And then I was undeclared. I was moving around from degree to degree. And it really wasn't until I stumbled into exercise science and had you, and I did the oh my gosh, I can't remember what course it was. The one where we learned about motivational interviews.
Oh, yeah. So exercise motivation and adherence.
Yes. And that's where it kind of like sparked something in me where it's like, oh man, I really got to start working out with a purpose and start doing physical stamina. But I was also working like 2 jobs in college and was averaging like no sleep. Not an excuse, just wasn't good with my time balance. Then once I graduated college, and then I ended up, long story short, a few years after that, got a job where I was doing personal training full time, and I fully dedicated myself to exercise and working out. And it was, yeah, now it's now not so much. Kind of getting back into the swing of things. COVID-19. I know you have a different opinion where you're like, there's really no excuse during the COVID thing. But for me, I was so focused on my one job, and there was so much overtime that was up for grabs. I kind of lost track of exercise altogether. And I'm recently getting back in to the swing of things because I'm realizing how out of shape I became in that 2-year window, and it's insane. And I'm getting back into the swing of it, and it's
Dude, I got in better shape during COVID.
I know you did.
Didn't have to commute for 2 hours, and could, I didn't have to take the kids to school. I mean, I gained a lot of time. Now it's like I'm struggling to find the time to be able to work out as much as I want to, and to maintain those health gains that I might have had over COVID. Back to the commute. Although school's over now, but driving my son to and from school, and then having now the the conditioning practices for wrestling. That's a little bit more time. It's a lot harder to get all that time in exercising. But I was quite the opposite as a early college student, and I wasn't an exercise science major. I started in geology. Well, actually, started in mine engineering. But I realized really my first semester in college that I needed to be exercising. I had been in sports all through high school, with the exception of my last senior year. I didn't do track and field because it's like, why do I want to waste my time? This isn't getting me in shape for another sport. I'm not good at it, and I just didn't do it. But I still kind of continued to lift and do some of that kind of stuff. But what I found was that when I would take like afternoon classes, I would be dozing off. I'd struggle to stay awake. And I realized that was my time window, that in high school, I always had some form of conditioning and practice and all that kind of stuff. And so I realized that I needed to start working out. And that was kind of my workout time. I wouldn't schedule classes. I'd go to the gym at that time. And, that basically continued. And then I, got into exercise science, and it made it even more important to keep active. And I don't think it's ever really changed since then. And so, again, I think a lot of it is kind of that mindset. What are we prioritizing? And how is society dictating what we prioritize? That may be a bigger issue with it as well. I think, we're in a society that health is something that, you either have or you don't have. And if you don't have, you get treated for it rather than you take the steps to regain health or to maintain health. And so we don't emphasize the need to be living a healthy lifestyle so that we can avoid being hospitalized, having to go to the doctor, being treated, being on medication, and doing all those types of things. And I think we need a shift. And I think as you look at these older populations, they're the ones who they're starting to experience some of these health issues, and they have the time, they have the will, they have the desire to make changes in their life to become healthier or to be healthier. And so, they want to avoid those rows of pills on their, counter in their bathroom, and be able to live longer. And so they're recognizing that exercise and activity is largely important. And so, we look at retirement communities and things like that. One of the priorities is exercise facilities in a lot of those, and opportunities for activity for those individuals.
All right. So the good life equation. This is one of their other subjects, that a sharp brain plus close relationships plus independence is the good formula, essentially, for the good life equation. All these news notations about health were reinforced in the study when we asked about what health issues people worry about the most. Respondents feared loss of mobility and mental decline far more than life-threatening but less symptomatic issues like diabetes or even heart disease. Even if they have health issues, they're really worried about, can I still move? And am I mentally sharp? Can I still connect with and see my family? That's a powerful message that the medical community and even family members and caregivers don't always hear when advising older people on important health decisions, such as undergoing a major medical procedures. It shouldn't be treated at all costs. Geriatrics are at the forefront of having these conversations, asking the patient what's meaningful for them and understanding the impact. Recovery time is hard. It's really important to talk to patients, understand the implications for their independence. I agree that most of us, at least in my age group, we're not necessarily worried about, oh my gosh, I'm going to get diabetes someday. In fact, a lot of people are more worried about, am I going to get dementia or Alzheimer's? And I think that's a huge, huge realization. And it's a huge, not even a fear, but a phobia for a lot of people. I think we've discussed in other podcasts, every single person knows or has known someone who either has dementia or Alzheimer's or some form of cognitive illness, and there's really no way to prevent it. There's a way to delay it, but there's no way to prevent it, and there's no way to cure it. Versus, the whole diabetes thing, where it's like, oh man, I got diabetes. Well, there's a procedure where I can take medication and I'll be fine, or I can just watch my blood sugar. But that cognitive ailment of not knowing where I am, not knowing who I am, not knowing the people that are around me, not remembering the memories that I've made over those years, that's a huge fear for at least for me, you know?
Well, I mean, and I understand that being a fear for the general population, that, we don't want to live our final years in a state where we just don't know where we are and who we are and all those types of things. So I think that speaks volumes to what is going on in the medical community, where we tend to promote that we can treat these problems. And so anything that's treatable, we don't have to worry about. And so we can say, well, I don't have to worry about my obesity because I'll just take a pill for the diabetes. I can take medications. I can be treated for these things. But something like, dementia or other cognitive impairments that might come with aging, we fear those because there's no prevention, there's no treatment.
Right.
And the focus really needs to be on having a mindset that let's do what we can do to prevent the major health problems, which, in reality, the health issues that come along with obesity, diabetes, inactivity, and all those types of things are far greater than the risks that come along with dementia. We tend to put an emphasis on dementia because it seems more prominent, but it's not as prominent as these other health issues that we are less concerned about.
I think it's because it is such a fear of getting it. You know what I mean? And so it just feels as if it's more prominent.
Yeah.
Right. But it's really, like you said, it's not. The other ones are way more prominent, but they're also way more preventable. Right.
And they're treatable. And that's why people don't care. I mean, if we can treat it, if we can take a pill, we're okay. If there's a pill for it, we're okay. I don't have to worry about that. If there's a treatment for it, I don't have to worry about it.
I think that also kind of contradicts with that very first question. Assume for a moment that there was a pill that could extend your life by 10 10 years? How likely would you be able to take that pill? Right. And so these people, they're more afraid of getting dementia, Alzheimer's. They want to be mentally with it. They want to make sure that they're physically capable of not just living, but being alive, experiencing life. And yet those percentage of taking the pill is like, would you take this pill if it allowed you to do this? Yeah, I would. Those are pretty high, right? But it's also everything is preventable and everything that everyone wants, which is I want to live longer. I want to not have diabetes essentially. Well, that's all preventable with exercise, nutrition, um, focusing on your emotional health. Like that's all going to have factors where you really don't need to take any of those pills.
Yeah. And, we've talked about some of the studies over the course of some of the podcasts, particularly the nutritional aspects of it and some of the exercise with how, dementia may not be preventable, but we can certainly delay
Correct.
the presence of it in our lives. And so, making those healthy choices should be our focus. And I'm going to continue to kind of attack the medical profession because I don't think they do a good enough job in really promoting the preventative side of health. Because there's no money to be made in it. There's no money to be made if I, tell people to exercise. Gyms might make a little bit of money, but big pharma doesn't make a lot of money from somebody getting healthy. So what is the incentive to tell people to do that? God, it would be great if we could, put a lot of pharmacists and doctors and nurses and all that into the unemployment lines because people are so healthy, we don't need them. The reality is, we have probably far too many doctors that are treating, having to treat things and wanting to find things to treat so that they can make the money. And then too few nurses to be able to deal with the health issues that we're creating by not addressing the issues that we should be addressing. And so there's a lot of imbalance in the healthcare profession, and how we approach healthcare. And I think, this article, Health Redefined, there's a kind of a two-edged sword there. We have this kind of change across the populations in how we define health, but there's also a need to redefine health. So I don't know if we've answered any questions in this podcast today.
I don't think we necessarily answered. I think we really broke down the question. And if anything, we've just kind of expanded each one and opened it up to make people think. It's not just a question that's being asked. It's an important question. And it's not something that if you were to ask the question of, are you currently taking these steps to achieve or maintain healthy weight, physical stamina? Are you getting restful sleep? Well, then those are all a perceptive question.
Yeah. Do we know what is healthy weight? Do we know what restful sleep is? Do we know what stamina is? Do we know what a healthy heart is? Do we really know what these things are? And until we know and we know what that definition is, it's kind of hard to compare kind of cross-sectionally how people are doing in these various categories. So I think there's a lot yet to be addressed. And I think there's a couple other good articles that we can kind of dive into in future podcasts. One thing that we didn't talk about today was, in part of this article, they talk about the number of seniors that are lifting weights now. And, I think we dive into that a little bit, the importance of resistance training. And we kind of touched on a little bit earlier how, early on exercise science has promoted cardio, and heart health as being so important. And we've neglected the aspects of strength as a big component of health. We want to get people maintaining healthier lifestyles? Well, they need the mobility, the functionality, the strength to be able to do those activities. And so how do we get that? Well, we don't get it from, doing cardio exercise. We get it from doing strengthening exercises that permit us to do more activities that are going to maintain a healthier heart. And so I think we need to dive into that a little bit more. And I think that will be perhaps our next podcast. Any concluding statements?
Not really, guys. Just nope. There's no concluding statement except for try not to take the easy way out by taking a pill.
I don't think there is a pill. So
there is not a pill.
If there was, I would want to have invented it, and I'd be a billionaire, probably a trillionaire at this point. I do tell my students that, if they can ever invent that pill that will allow us to maintain our levels. I don't want that pill that's going to give us. I don't think there could ever be this pill that would allow us to just take a pill and suddenly we have adequate muscle strength and endurance, adequate cardiorespiratory endurance, great flexibility. It just makes us perfectly healthy across all of the components of physical fitness. But if we could come up with that pill that prevents us from having to endure the principle of reversibility, that, once you stop, you lose it all, then that's where the money is to be made. Because in that way, you still have to do the work to kind of get there.
Yep.
But then you can kind of coast through the rest of life and you don't have to deal with the decline of aging. But I don't see that happening either. And again, it's not a pill. It's going to be do it up front. And I think we need to probably bring up some of those percentages in the 18 to 30 age group so that we initiate a lifestyle that we're going to want to maintain on into our 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and beyond, so that, maybe the worst health issues we're dealing with in our 80s is the risk of dementia. And I think that would be a worthwhile pursuit. And I'd rather that's the only concern I have to have going into my 80s is dementia. But,
beautifully said.
And until that pill is found, well, hopefully people will continue to, age well.
Always remember to keep aging well, guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.